let's get back to that Baker topic because we didn't put a bow on that earlier.
There's still meat on that bone?
There's still a little meat on that bone because G. Bush was ready.
No,
it felt like he was ready to go off.
No, I thought it was.
I have a quick nugget.
It was Jason. Jason was ready to go off because he, you know what I'm saying, he was like, why did you tell me? What was the problem? What did you say, Bull? Why would you be upset?
Well, he said that Cynthia said that she made a mistake. That was my only point. She never should have said it. Mm-hmm. And you have to know the rules of engagement. And people could say she's not a reporter. Well, guess what? You're holding a microphone on the sideline, and your job is a bill sideline.
Yeah, you're a reporter.
To me, that part of the conversation is over because she admitted she made a mistake.
Yeah, but you yelled at me before the show for tweeting it out. I'm like,
I wasn't yelling at you. I was just
in the same way that just if you're holding that, then you are a reporter. If you're an athlete or somebody of note and you don't want anything you're saying being misinterpreted, you probably shouldn't say stuff like that. So I'm saying there's definitely culpability there.
Of course.
What's really bothering Baker about this, though, I think, and why well, first of all, obviously the media, including us, are whipping this into way more of a thing than it needs to be.
Yeah, but because he's got so many people that kiss his ass.
We're hungry for that narrative, and we want that's a great storyline. That's why we're like, are you sure you didn't say that? What if you said it like this? I'm going to pretend like you said it like this. There's some of that going on because we want this to be true. But what Baker doesn't like is we always say, he likes playing with a chip on his shoulder. This isn't a sign that he has a chip on his shoulder because now he has made the statement. He's the bad guy. Somebody has to talk down to him and say they're going to beat him. Right now, he's the villain who said he's the one promising he's going to try and F him up. Like normally, if he likes to react if somebody were to say, you're too short, you can't do this. That's him playing with a chip on your shoulder. If you're the one who says, I'm going to F up this team that drafted me, gave me these chances, did all these things, and then he becomes more of like the bad guy. He doesn't want to be the bad guy. He wants to be the victim.
I think he had to do some growing up this summer. It had to be incredibly humbling for him to see how this played out. Like he did one podcast where he kind of took a couple shots at the Browns. It wasn't as bad as I thought. He tried to make himself the victim. I've never thought he was the victim.
Right.
Ridiculous.
But, and I'm going to defend him for a minute. He has tried to keep his mouth shut. If you go back and look
I agree.
If you go back and look at Oklahoma, he went after TCU and Gary Barnett and never let it go. He went after Hugh Jackson and he never let it go. He's not doing that this time. I think this summer.
Do you think if things go well for him in week one, he'll do that in post game? No. Because I think he will.
I don't think he will. And maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But he's also on a one-year contract.
I don't think he can help himself.
He's on a one-year contract.
He's on a one-year contract.
And he knows that.
Yeah.
And he's got to behave. And he's got
if he were on a 3-year contract, he'd be talking smack all over the place.
He's got to prove to not only Carolina, but all the other teams who might sign him, I'm not going to be that person anymore. Yeah. Now, is it an act for 1 year? Possibly. Yeah. But I think he's really trying hard.
The ability to even do that act, though.
Well, Baker's always embraced this part of his personality. That's part of who I am. That's why I've been successful.
And look where it got him.
That's why. Well,
Carolina.
In college, it got him a Heisman Trophy, and it got him to a national championship game. So now at the next level, it got him to a playoff round, and he won a game, but that's not going to pay the bills. Mm-hmm. He knows that he's got to do more. He has to, and all eyes are on him. And I don't know that he can turn that corner.
I agree with Jay.
I don't think he can wash that off of his personality.
I think he will be very smug if he wins the game and very cocky about it.
Could be. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
I hope we never find out.
I get what he's saying. He's saying y'all wanted me to do this. Because I wouldn't give it to you the way you wanted me to, you got to manufacture it.
But nobody manufactured.
Oh, no, it was slightly manufactured.
Yeah, I agree with him.
Come on.
I think it
was manufactured.
How was it manufactured?
She put the words in his mouth.
There. Like she said,
she brought it up.
It was slightly manufactured.
But she said she brought it up. She didn't say the exact words she brought up.
But you can't approach a person. He on the sideline.
Yeah.
She approached him, put the words there, and then spun it.
She didn't purposely spin it.
Spin and spin. I can't help
I don't buy that.
I don't think she did it intentionally,
but
that's
it's
exactly
a
what
spin.
happened.
Yeah.
But there's no way she did it on purpose.
She left out one of the tent poles of the story.
Hey, listen.
I know that, but
she left that out.
When she was telling the story, she didn't think it was going to be anything. So, of course, she didn't make sure.
That you're right about.
Like, sometimes you're telling a story, and you may get it slightly wrong, and it may be a key piece, but you don't think it's a big deal at the time, so it's not a big deal.
She still doesn't understand why it's a big deal. She said, I wish this thing needs to go away already.
We just did a whole summer about people in perspective, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you do things that you don't think you did, but it really harms a lot of people.
But to your point, and you're right, some people, like, I love it. If Baker says something stupid, I love it now. I do love it. But there's a lot of people that kiss his ass and are on his side.
Yeah,
so not
of course.
everybody's out to get him.
Of course.
He's not a victim. And you said it too, Jason. This whole thing that he's a victim, the Browns treated him unfairly, is ridiculous.
That is ridiculous.
It's completely ridiculous.
But on this one, I see where he's coming from.
We let him play even when he was badly injured. Yeah. You know what I mean?
To their own detriment.
That's how much we care.
It's fair. I mean, he's probably...
Aditi, welcome to the program. Let's change the subject. How are things in your world today, Aditi? Brighten up the mood.
Aditi, is Baker the first quarterback ever to play injured? Because some people in Cleveland think he's the only quarterback that's ever played injured.
Give him a Purple Heart because he had a hurt shoulder last year.
There's 18 different things that I want to say here. So
all right,
dive in.
Everybody's full of beans today, Aditi.
All right, so let's just go back to Baker and him really obviously making a concerted effort to not lose his personality and not lose the magic of his personality, but also perhaps be a little bit more restrained, a little bit more contained in the way he talks. And I'll tell you this, I was talking to somebody in Carolina who insisted that the Panthers organization loves that Baker has some edge to him. And the contrast to that is that a year ago, Sam Darnold was the starting quarterback about to face his old team, the Jets, and he kept just blowing it off. Oh, whatever, I'm a Panther now. Oh, well, whatever, the Jets are one of 31 teams. Where was that fire? Where was that juice? You want Baker to say, of course I'm not a robot. Of course it matters to me. Of course I want to take it to them. I mean, come on, Jay. As much as you must have loved your time in ESPN, don't you want to show that you're bigger and better and have moved on? I feel the same way about the NFL Network.
Of course,
Adam,
I know I'm bigger and better than the fan. I know that.
That's the nature of the game. Of course he wants to win. Of course he wants to take it to his own
then why
team.
did he lie about what he said?
But we don't know.
I think
Again,
I think
this is, you know what, this one is so hard for me, Adam.
Yeah.
Cynthia Frelund is a really good friend of mine. I feel so strongly about who Cynthia is. But I also think that reporting is a very fine, funny dance. And the truth of the matter is that Cynthia's day job is being in studio. She is an absolutely brilliant data analyst who can break down numbers in a way that I could never wish to do that. Sometimes there are just rules of the road in reporting that even if you're living in that world, you sometimes don't think of the repercussions of that. And look, I've been a reporter for 20 years now, and when you guys were just telling a story, it made me think back to something I did a year ago that was illustrative. The point that I was trying to make is Steelers fans were so frustrated with Ben Roethlisberger, and this is right after Mason Rudolph had managed nothing better than a tie against the then winless Lions. Oof. And I was trying to illustrate why Ben Roethlisberger was the best option for the Steelers. I said something as, this is how Dwayne Haskins was preparing for the first shirt that he got. In giving a piece of evidence, it blew up on me. I mean, I was called everything from a racist to a horrible person when the piece of evidence that I was being given was actually noted by two members of the Steelers organization. I never expected it to go where it went, the same way that Cynthia didn't expect this to go. She only saw it in one way, the same way that when I was saying, hey, this is what Dwayne Haskins was doing before he got his first shirt, I didn't mean it to turn into what it did. My intentions were all in the right place. It doesn't make me a horrible person or a liar. I don't think Cynthia is a horrible person or a liar. I just don't think that she thought through, hey, when I repeat this, even though I intend for it to be read this way, it's actually going to be taken that way. I think that Baker's responding exactly as you expect him to respond. He doesn't want to throw extra fuel to the fire. And he basically said in his entire response, in not those same words, that's exactly what he wants to do. And really, what else do we expect him to want to do?
But nobody is criticizing. But nobody's criticizing him for that. So why is he making himself a victim?
Because that's what Baker does, right? Isn't that how he's always operated? Like, even once he was already at Oklahoma and even once he was already under scholarship, he was still the guy with the chip on his shoulder. Even when he was the #1 overall draft pick, he was still the guy with the chip on his shoulder. I mean, that's just whatever. Everybody needs to take motivation from different places. Adam, this is the conversation we had the other day about whether they were actually going to use this as bulletin board material. And you heard Kevin Stefanski say no, and you heard Myles Garrett say no. I mean, everybody needs a different thing to get themselves going. If that's what he needs. That's what he needs.
I agree with you. I think that's your analysis on Cynthia's take and Baker's take. I agree. I couldn't agree more. The only thing that bothers me a little bit about what Baker's done here is he's just basically saying that Cynthia is not telling the truth, because he started his comments yesterday by saying, I didn't say it. And then he went on to kind of paraphrase that he agreed with her, which she's taking ownership of, that she's the one that made the initial comment. But I feel badly for Cynthia in this particular instance, because he's turned it into a he said, she said, and I didn't say what she's saying I said. So she's basically being called a liar.
Didn't he do that to Mary Kay Cabot last year?
He did the exact same thing to Mary Kay Cabot.
And she was right.
And it was wrong then, too. It was wrong then, too.
This is part of his playbook. And the only piece that makes it hard, I think those of us in the media understand that this regularly happens. I mean, my goodness, I remember the tales of back in New York. So I won't reveal the names, but a Giants beat writer that was on the beat when I was on the Giants beat used to love to tell us the story of 10 years before, when a player, a very, very famous player, was his source off the record. He would write these things in a New York City tabloid, and then the next day that player would stand in the middle of the Giants locker room screaming, who said this? Who said this? When it was the player who was doing the who said this, that was the source for all of those stories. So we are all used to this. We all acknowledge that this is unfortunately sometimes how it goes. The only difficulty, the piece that's really hard, is that sometimes these players, these coaches, these people that sort of impugn our integrity don't acknowledge is that the trolls out in the social media world don't necessarily understand that this is how the game is played, and they attack very, very terribly. And whether it's Cynthia in this moment, whether it's Mary Kay Cabot last year, whether it's been me or any of us sitting around the table, I mean, that's the piece of it that sucks, is that unfortunately this is part of the shrapnel of the job. And if only viewers and listeners and readers were a little bit smarter to get that.
Aditi, if we ever named names, people would lose their minds. People would lose their minds if we started naming names.
Here's my question, though, Aditi. You live in this world. Will this end up affecting any of her access to players? Will this hurt her trust with players, fair or unfairly, or do they know how this works, and do they know how Baker works, and they're going to ignore this?
I mean, I'll tell you what I told her when we talked on the phone. It's a 48-hour news cycle.
Yep.
You know, I was in the depths of despair over, very frankly, when Deshaun Watson, so as you all know, I talked to Deshaun Watson before the first preseason game, and then 6 days later, he comes out with a press conference after a settlement is agreed to. And much of what he said, we could sit here and parse exact words, but much of what he said in that press conference on the surface seemed to lay lie to some of the things that he said to me. And obviously it wasn't a staged event, but I was accused of, being a lackey, being used, staging things, 20 years of journalism credibility out the window, all of this. And I cried and I cried. And a very good friend in the business called me and said, everything is a 48-hour news cycle. And it is. I mean, in less than 2 days, everybody had moved on to something else. And that's what I said to Cynthia. And I think at the end of the day, players are smart enough to judge you on your entire body of work. And I don't think that this hurts Cynthia moving forward. I don't think that it necessarily even hurts her with Baker. I think that if Baker is fair, he understands that her intentions were never to string him up in any way. And as he said, they've known each other for a very long time.
I hope you're right. I don't know about that, though. I hope you're right, but I don't know that Baker is mature enough to move past that.
Let me stop you right there. If Baker is fair, let me stop you right there.
I don't care.
I don't know, Jason, because I'm really concerned about it. I'm going down to Carolina a week from now for CBS, sitting in a production meeting. You better believe we're expecting the starting quarterback in the production meeting. Right. Is he going to look at me and not want to talk? Is he not going to say anything? Is he not going to help us in our game coverage? Because he's a little bit now gun shy, or he feels a little bit burned, or and this is, Jason, you and I have talked about this a lot. Often we're all distinct individuals. We all go about our jobs in different ways, but we often get lumped into the same group.
Exactly,
so
yes.
I don't know. I'm going to remain hopeful for the next week that Baker does exactly know what this score is, because I need my help next
I'll bet
week.
he goes the other way. I'll bet he goes the other way and overcompensates by being even more helpful and being more engaged and stuff like that to prove that he doesn't, that he's not holding a grudge and
I
to be
hope
cool.
so.
I'll bet
You'll
he
tell,
is.
you'll tell us for sure, Aditi. Yeah, and you'll let us know for sure how he treats you and how what his demeanor is.
Sure.
Let me ask you this. I was also texting with Cynthia yesterday, and the one thing that my takeaway is, her lane is not building relationships with players.
Right.
That's the irony of this. If this obviously, I can never see you ever doing this, but if you were her, I'd be concerned, because your lane and your business is relationships with players and getting them to share things with you. Cynthia crunches numbers, and she does it as well as anyone I have ever worked with. She's great at that. I think what happened was she was in the role of the sideline reporter for the Bills, and she was probably placed in a really unfair spot in that podcast when the host of that podcast asked her to share something that I think the host should have known, even though it was juicy and salacious, that's just not appropriate for air. That discussion, in my view, shouldn't have happened, and I thought she was placed in a bad spot. But moving forward, she's going to go back to crunching numbers. She's going to be great at it, and her job and her thriving at her job does not depend on players having relationships with her.
Again, I mean, yes, that's very true. And also, one other piece I would say here is that I think that players at the end of the day know whether you're right or wrong. They know whether you are being fair or not. And while a fan may not like what you say, a player at the end of the day knows that. And I mean, this has been my experience in Pittsburgh, right? Where Steelers fans have been very upset about things that I have reported as having happened or having been said or having been true about any number of people, be it Ben Roethlisberger or be it Antonio Brown or be it, the late Dwayne Haskins. That hasn't once affected a relationship with a player. Cam Hayward is not asking me to play in his charity softball outing if he thinks that I'm a jerk. Mm-hmm. Josh Dobbs isn't telling me that I'm one of the most fair reporters he's ever dealt with if I'm making stuff up. I don't, Marquise Pouncey isn't still my friend if I'm lying about Ben Roethlisberger. So while the public might question what Cynthia reports or what I report or what Jason reports, the people who are actually living in our world, at the end of the day, whether they like it or not, they know that whether we're doing our jobs credibly and with integrity or
those
not.
Those people are not worth listening to.
I'll tell you what, Aditi, it's all good. We all good. Everybody rich, right? Like we cover sports.
I don't know about me, G. Maybe you.
No. We cover sports for a living. We ain't digging no ditches. We not working at Walmart. Right. People will get over it. We'll be fine. Now for football, I'll tell you what. This does put a little spice in the air for the first game. I don't believe.
Oh, do you think it needed more? Do you think it needed more? Right? Let's be honest.
Just be clear about this. You know what? What is your idea about the people in Carolina? I think that the people that are in Carolina are behind Baker, whatever what he's saying. I think they're squarely behind him, because just like here, when you haven't had any confidence, when your team is down, when you ain't had no wins, it's a breath of fresh air to have somebody come in with that level of energy. And I think Baker giving them a little bit of energy. You don't hear nobody in Carolina saying they shying away from his comments.
Right, Gee, and that was exactly my point earlier when I was using Sam Darnold as an example, right? There are different personalities that fit different markets. And I used to say this about Baker, that I thought he was perfect for Cleveland, because he was like, no, you are not doing you-know-what on our town. You are not coming after us. You are not coming after this organization. We have swagger too. And I felt that Cleveland needed that. When Hugh Jackson was saying whatever Hugh Jackson was and Baker was standing up essentially for the whole organization and the whole city, same thing in Carolina. Sam Darnold, very nice young man. Clearly, he was picked right after Baker in the draft. He has some ability. But I think that Carolina needs that swagger. Carolina is a team that has never gone to the playoffs 2 years in a row. They don't have legacy fans, like in the city of Pittsburgh, your father and your grandfather and your great-grandfather rooted for the Steelers. Yeah. You are born here, you're going to root for the Steelers. The Browns, you have family members that rooted for the Browns. You probably know somebody that remembers the days of Jim Brown and all of the magic of that franchise. Carolina just doesn't have that. So they need somebody to say, okay, it's our turn and we belong and we're just as tough and you're not going to, on us.
But you really think Baker? I don't want to spend.
The internet. It's not. The FCC rules aren't as tough on the internet, are they?
Yeah, we good.
No, you say what you want.
I don't really want to spend any more time on Baker but I don't think there's any chance he becomes that quarterback that takes Carolina to the Super Bowl or takes Carolina to the playoffs twice. But anyway, so let's get to this matchup. I
don't
really
want to hear nothing about Baker. Get out of here.
It's like the idea that Baker's going to turn around Carolina to me is crazy. I don't get it.
You know what's funny about this, though, Adam, is that we are definitely going to be talking about the quarterbacks. We're going to be talking about Baker, and we'll be talking about the quarterback who's not playing, Deshaun Watson. Yeah. But to me, if you just look at this as a football game, Christian McCaffrey allegedly looks better than he's looked in years. Christian McCaffrey is fully healthy. The Panthers have had a new whole plan for protecting Christian McCaffrey from himself. You've got Myles Garrett going up against a rookie left tackle. Myles Garrett, we talked about this Tuesday. Myles Garrett, whose standard is suddenly set at a completely different level. You've got a Browns defense that is unabashed in saying that it wants to be the number one defense in the NFL. I think that there are plenty of football storylines. There's even Matt Rule potentially coaching for his job. There's all of this going on. And obviously the low-hanging fruit is Baker Mayfield and the absence of Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, certainly. But let's talk. You brought up Myles Garrett and going up against a rookie tackle. I said the other day and again today that I think the season is a referendum on him. He's the most important player on defense. They've got to win by playing great defense and running the ball right now with Jacoby. And he's got to have that TJ Watt, that Aaron Donald type of season. He's certainly capable. I think he's got to lead. If the Browns are going to have success this year, he's got to be sack leader. He's got to win the defensive MVP. He has got to take it that one extra level and be an absolutely dominant player consistently throughout the year. Do you agree, and can he do it?
I do agree, and I do think that he can. He is a game changer. That's what the definition of a game changer is. And in fact, in that third sideline game, I asked this question of Anthony Walker and John Johnson a little inartfully. But what I was essentially trying to get at is that this Browns defense is so fantastic because it's not designed to isolate or show off anybody outside of those ends. There's a ton of talent in Denzel Ward, in Greg Newsome, in JOK. You've got a lot of pieces that work well together, that make up a great defense. But the defensive design from Joe Woods is not to put anybody on an island to show them off outside of, perhaps, Myles Garrett. And so Myles Garrett makes it go. I mean, that's it. This is what Alonzo Highsmith used to say all the time. The first guy you pay is the guy that throws the ball. The second guy you pay is the guy who eats the guy who throws the ball. I mean, Myles Garrett is the most important person on the field for the Cleveland Browns when the defense is out there. So go the same way that Baker Mayfield wants to rattle off however many consecutive passes in a row or throw for however many touchdowns or whatever he has done when he has faced a former team or a former coach. Well, Myles Garrett should want to get 4 sacks too. Myles Garrett should want to blow up whatever it is the Panthers are trying to do. And oh, by the way, that also means stopping the run game.
Aditi, I have absolutely no idea after 3 preseason games what this offense is going to look like when it comes out in the first quarter in Carolina, the Browns. What do you think? You've been more involved in seeing this in the day-to-day. How do you think they're going to look in that first quarter? Do you think we're going to be pleasantly surprised? Because right now, I just don't think we've even seen enough to make any sense of what they're doing.
Well, what's your definition of surprise and pleasant? Is moving the chains enough?
I guess I just want to know if it's going to look nice. Yeah, points to be good. I want to know if they're going to look, if you have confidence in them to look competent.
Yeah. I think that this is going to be a smart, if you ask me one word, smart. I think it will be a smart offense. I think it will be a methodical offense. I think it's an offense that we're going to see a lot of ball control. We're going to see a lot of 2 tight ends. We're going to see a lot of running the ball. Not that we're not going to see shots down the field, but I don't expect them to come out and Jacoby Brissett on first down throw deep to Amari Cooper, and then on second down throw deep to Anthony Schwartz, who may or may not catch the ball, and then on the first down again. I don't think that that's what. Not that this is not an offense that is incapable of explosion. I just think that a lot of that comes off of establishing the run. And I think that that's what you want to see. And I think that if you're seeing an offense that's controlling the clock, that's moving the chains, then that's all you should be asking for. Yeah. You don't need that big, huge play. And that goes back to what Adam's saying is sometimes a big momentum creator is a huge sack, is a huge defensive play. Sometimes a huge momentum creator is a 15-play, 8-minute drive that sucks the life out of the other team. So a big spot of momentum is not necessarily just a 72-yard touchdown pass to Amari Cooper.
Yeah, that's
sure, that would be great. And I'm not saying that it's impossible. I'm just saying have faith that there are different ways to move the ball, and that at the end of the day, moving the ball is all you want to do.
That's it.
I needed that reassurance. Next week.
Thanks, Aditi.
Game week next week.
We appreciate it.
Finally.
We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Aditi.
Sounds good, guys.